Hey guys, it's cider taste testing time. From left to right, we've got the Yeast Smack Pack cider with a hint of strawberry sauce in there. Next along, we've got the WLP 775, the White Labs cider yeast. It's absolutely fantastic. One of my favourites, that one. And the next one along, although it's in a Grolsch bottle, that is a normal bog standard Jervin ale yeast. And in all of these instances, I've not added anything else other than the yeast and the apple juice, with the exception of this one here that's got a little bit of strawberry sauce in, but only a very, very small, minute bit of strawberry sauce in. Okay. Now, what the plan for this particular taste test was to really just concentrate on the profile rather than the taste. Hopefully that will make sense to you. Now, I've been doing ciders for a long time now, so I've been able to, during that time, determine between the different characteristics of each yeast that I use. So if you give me a cider, I'm confident now, if you give me a cider, I'll be able to tell you whether you've used a liquid yeast or a dry yeast. So the only dry yeast in the bunch is this one on the right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the camera around and we're going to do a little bit of a taste test and we'll have a little bit of a chat about it. Alright? Bonjour folks. Now usually I do the hello bits at the beginning, don't I? But I just wanted to show you the three drinks I've got underneath me here. Now obviously I would like to have the camera a little bit differently placed. Maybe I should have mounted it on something, but it's not important. What is important is the flavour profile of the different types of yeast. I shouldn't say the word flavour there because that implies that I'm going to be judging these ciders on their flavour, and I'm not. It's going to be how smooth the cider is really, and whether there's any sharpness in there as a result of the different types of yeast that we've used, and whether there is still some sort of additional apple sweetness in there. Have we improved the flavour of the apple juice? Has it deteriorated the flavour of the original apple juice? How are we with you know, the look and the feel of the different types of yeasts that we're using? So it's all about figuring out really whether we prefer a liquid yeast or a dry yeast. And why am I doing this? Well, it's because on Facebook, on the Turbo Cider Makers group, there's been some debate about all the different types of yeasts that the guys on there are using. Now, a lot of the people on the Turbo Cider Makers group are beginners, and of course you are going to want to start off with using dry yeasts. But my message to the guys, and my message to you folks, is if you buy a packet of cider yeast, you expect to pay between sort of £1 and £1.50 for a sachet of yeast, okay? If you're going to buy a liquid yeast, you expect to pay somewhere between £6 to £7 for a liquid yeast. So immediately you're already put off by the fact that it's 5 or 6 times more expensive to buy the liquid yeast. However, the one good thing about the liquid yeast is you can grow them up and you can use them time and 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 time again, making your money back tenfold, in fact more than that, by just growing the yeasts up and continuing to use them. The dry yeast, not so much. You can't really do that with the dry yeast. They'll go off. Now you might be able to get 2 batches off of a single dry yeast just by pouring some more apple juice over the top of the sediment from, you know, a single batch. But beyond that, I wouldn't want to do it much more than that. You'll start getting off flavours and stuff because the dry yeast isn't made for that, whereas the liquid yeast you can manipulate, folks, and you can grow it up and do weird and wonderful things with it. So take a look out on my channel on YouTube. This is where you are now, folks. There is a video of me cultivating some liquid yeast. It really is quite simple. It's not difficult at all. It just takes a little bit of patience and some mason jars they call them in America, Kilner jars. We call them over here, doesn't really matter, it's just a brand name. Just some jars, that's all you need, glass jars that are going to be able to withstand boiling temperatures. That's really important, that, because you're going to need to sanitize them. So I thought, well, while I'm telling people on the Turbo Cider Makers group that please think about using liquid yeasts, I need to be able to back that up with something, because it's all very well me saying use a liquid yeast, folks, they're better than anything else, but we need to do a taste test and comparison. So we've got 3 different types of yeast here. 2 are liquid yeasts. 1 is a Jervin ale yeast from Wilkinson's in the UK. This is the Wilkinson's Jervin ale yeast. Now this, unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to put it cold in the fridge. It's not too bad. It's a little murky, although it's quite clean. It doesn't look too bad. Okay, so I mean, you know, I'd be happy with that if this was my first cider batch. I'd go, oh, that's not too bad. That there is a little bit of lacing on there, but I suspect that lacing is there because I back sweetened it, which you have to do with a dry cider to get rid of that sharpness. You have to, folks, trust me, I'm a doctor. If you don't back sweeten your ciders or cold crash them or control the sweetness in some way, you will get a cider that is too sharp to drink, and it will put you off doing it again. So let's have a little taste of this one, see what it's like. Okay, it's quite dry, but then we expect that. There's a little bit of sweetness in there. I personally can taste that there's some sweetener in there. It's not overpowering, but it's just enough to take away that sharpness. It hasn't taken it away completely though. There's still a slight hint at the back end of some sharpness in there. If that were ice cold in the fridge, straight out of the fridge, it would probably improve it a little bit. As it's at room temperature though, it's okay, folks. It's not too bad. Would I do this one again? Probably not, because I've had better experiences by using other yeasts. But I think it's important to compare one against another, and that's what we're doing today, isn't it? So we already know then from that taste test, and I'm not lying to you, I'm being honest to you, folks. I always am honest to you. I would be happy with this if it was my first batch. Would I do it again? Probably not, no. It's quite dry. It's got fake sweetener taste in there that I can taste. Some other people might not be able to pick up on it. There's a little bit of lace in there, which you don't expect to see in a cider, of course, but I suspect that's the maltodextrin in the Splendor, the sweetener. Now we're going to go on to the WLP 775, which is the White Labs cider yeast, brewed specifically for use in ciders and nothing else. It's one of my favourites. It has to be top of the list for me, and you don't have to take my word for it, I'm just being honest with you, and I shall give you the reasons in a second once we've done the full comparison, folks. So as you can see, it's crystal clear, this one. That is a fantastic looking cider, isn't it? Now what I will tell you is that all of these ciders have been made using the same orange juice. Apple juice. But it doesn't look like that, does it? It's the same juice, folks. This one's a little bit cloudy, of course, because we used an ale yeast, and ale yeast tend to sort of leave some sort of haze in the brews, whereas this is a clean cider yeast specifically for ciders. Amazing colour, beautiful colour. That looks like, to me, like a strongbow, I guess. It's as close in colour as you would get to a strongbow. There's a little bit of lacing on the top, but that's alright, it doesn't matter. It's not quite as bad as the ale one, I don't think. Now the colour is fantastic, but the smell is even better. We can smell apples, folks. In comparison to the ale, can we smell apples? No, I can smell yeast. There's no appleness in there. It's I would say to me it's a little bit lackluster. It's I don't want to say it's dead, right? Because if you're starting out doing ciders and things, I don't want to put you off, but it's a little bit lackluster. Now, forgive me while you know I do this in my videos a lot. I mess with my hair, don't I? And I'll tell you why before I go on to a taste test for this. In this kitchen, with these little lights, right, installed into the ceiling itself, they produce far too much heat, and during the summer it's just too hot, folks, out here. You couldn't stand out here with the lights on, but I do need some light in order to do these videos, so you'll have to forgive me for that. And I do that because I start sweating a lot and I have to pull my hair back. Plus I've just got out of the bath and my hair's all wet still. But I wanted to do these taste tests because I had it in my head that people have been talking about it on the Turbo Cider group, and I wanted to put people straight and explain the differences rather than just typing it in a single text answer. You can all post your questions down below, indeed if you have any. If you want me to go into more detail, I'm happy to do that in another video. So, the 775, as we've already said, perfectly clear and crisp, beautiful colour, amazing colour, good carbonation on there, but we're not talking about the carbonation, it's not about that. The smell is just apples hitting you in the face. If I bought this in a shop, before I've even tasted it, and you may think I'm biased, but I'm just being honest, okay? Before I've even tasted it, I'd be happy with that. It smells like a Strongbow, really, with perhaps more, even better profile than a Strongbow, because a Strongbow has a slight hint of apple. But I think this might be even better. Yeah, I think that's a lot better. Taste-wise, now remember, we're talking about the profile here. Oh man. Oh, that's beautiful. That is like being smacked in the face with apples. It immediately hits your cheeks, and not in a sharp way. It's really, really smooth. That is better than a Strongbow, folks. That's just amazing. I can't believe I made that myself. You know, that is as good as a commercial bought cider. I'm being honest with you. You don't have to take my word for it. Look at that colour, carbonation. You have to take my word on the taste, obviously, and the smell. But oh man, that's amazing. So immediately, already, between the two, the colour profile is completely different. Same apple juice, remember? Oh man, I might have to drink this all in one go. No sharpness at all on that. Hopefully you can see in my face as well, because I've had people commenting on my faces when I drink and there's some sharpness in a brew. I tend to do that a bit. This hasn't got that sort of... Do it again. I think it's because whenever I've made ciders in the past, before I started using the liquid yeasts, I've always been expecting that sharpness, and so, you know, after a while, when you first start doing ciders and things, you get used to it. But it's not there. It's not there. And so the ale yeast has the sharpness, and oh yeah, you can taste straight away once you've tasted that one. Compare it against this one. That's a completely different drink altogether, and it's the same. It's just juice. That I'm not drinking any more of. We'll not drink any more of that. That's going to go into the shed, and I'll find somebody else to drink it. So I think we've said enough about the ale yeast one and the WLP 775, even though this is ice cold and beautiful. Yeah. Isn't it amazing the difference between the yeasts? So what we're going to do now, folks, remember there's not just two, there's three. This one, you can see, is a slightly different colour if we compare it to the 775. Now this has got a very slight hint of strawberry sauce. You know the stuff you put on your ice cream? Because I did a big batch of it and I put some strawberry sauce in just to give it a little bit of profile, and I had some strawberry sauce lying around and I wanted something a little bit different. Now in this instance, obviously it's going to be difficult to compare against 775 apple-wisey, if that makes sense, because there's going to be a slight hint of strawberry in there. But I'm confident there's still going to be enough of an apple profile in there to rise it above the owl yeast before I even taste it. This has got the yeast smack pack cider yeast in there. Now that specific yeast is also it's also been suggested on the pack that you use it for mead and things. So it's not just a cider yeast, whereas the 775 is, although this is primarily for ciders. It's quite clear too. I mean, the clarity on that you can't argue with. Obviously there's a slight change in colour because of the strawberry sauce I put in there. There's a really slight hint of strawberry colour, but you expect that. But the difference again in the colour, guys, is, I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? So let's give it a little smell. The first thing I'm getting, unsurprisingly, is strawberry. And I used a very small packet, not packet, but a very small bottle of the strawberry sauce. The smallest bottle you can get. Can't remember what type it was, but any old strawberry sauce will do. I did a big batch using that, and just to give it some sort of twist, unique twist on all the other ciders I've been making. And maybe we've been a little bit unfair here. Maybe we should just have an apple juice with the Y yeast in, with no additions. But I haven't got one lying around at the moment, and I wanted to do a taste comparison profile wise between the two. Oh, I'm going to get absolutely shit faced here, aren't I? So let's have a little taste. Now again, I've got to be honest folks, there's no sharpness in that. Perhaps just towards the back end there is a small hint of sharpness, but it's nowhere near that. It's very clean and crisp, and I can taste apples in there. The profile is completely different to the owl yeast. Unsurprisingly, some people are probably shouting at me for speaking the bloody obvious here, and perhaps I should have used a dry cider yeast for comparisons, but I'm just being honest with you guys, because the people in the Turbo Cider Makers group tend to use owl yeasts and wine yeasts and whatever they've got lying around, dry yeasts. So I didn't think it was too much of an issue by not using a dry cider yeast. What one do I prefer? Well, I have to go for the 775. That gets a 9 out of 10, it's that good. Second is the Y yeast, the smack pack. That probably gets an 8 out of 10. And then finally, we're going to go with the ale yeast. That gets a 5 out of 10. It's not great. It's there's no apple profile in there. What little hint there is masked when you bring it up to your mouth and you're hit with the smell of the yeast and alcohol, and it's just not very pleasant at all when you compare it with this one. And I can smell here is apples. So hopefully from that, folks, you'll get some idea as to the difference between the liquid yeasts and the you know, the dry yeasts, and there is still much debate ongoing, but all I can do is I can give you my opinion. You don't have to listen to me. You make your own choices. In fact, I recommend you do make your own choices. You do a side-to-side comparison between a Y yeast, a WLP 775, and a dry cider yeast or a dry ale yeast, whatever one you use, and you decide what one for you works best. But I'd put my money on it not being the dry yeast. That's all for now, folks. Hope you've enjoyed that little side-to-side taste test comparison type thing. If you've got any questions, stick them down below. Any more sort of in-depth type stuff about the differences between the three here. You know, I may be preaching to the converted already. I may be stating the obvious that the liquid yeasts are going to be better than the dry ones. It's not always the way for beer. Certainly the US-05 safe ale yeast is the go-to for a lot of brewers for pretty much all styles of beer, it would seem. And I've not had any trouble with the US-05 apart from one or two odd stalled fermentations. But I can't argue about the taste of the beers. The beers have been great. But I'm still trying the liquid yeast, folks. I've got some Mexican liquid yeast I've put into a cerveza. We'll do a little taste test on that soon. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Hopefully you've got something out of this. If not, don't worry about it too much. You know, this isn't a scientific experiment. It's just a sort of side-to-side taste test comparison with my palate. Obviously I can't do it. There's no one else here apart from me that drinks. But maybe we'll revisit it again someday, and you know, we'll do a dry cider with no additions, no sweeteners, against just a similar liquid yeast. But you know, I've got as close as I can in this instance from the ciders I've got left, and I haven't drunk. Although I am drunk now because I've just had 3 ciders, although this one still needs finishing. Excuse me for a second. Oh man, that's good. Oh, that hits the spot, folks. That hits the spot. So much appleness in there, and I can't overestimate it. When you drink it, the apples, the flavour seems to sort of spread across the inside of your face. It's very strange. It sort of goes like that, covers the inside of your face with that. Your face is basically like an apple. It's very, very strange, and you can imagine the first time I tried it, the liquid 775 yeast, how surprised I was when basically all along I'd been putting up with these inferior, in my opinion, ciders. Again, they're okay for starters if that's what you're doing. If you like them, don't worry about what I'm saying. You do your own thing, folks. But don't just say, Roy, you're talking shit, without trying it for yourself. That's why I'm doing this video. I'm trying to back up what I'm saying with some evidence. You need to try it for yourself though, obviously. Oh, my nose is running. So it's probably time for me to go, folks. See you next time, and happy home brews, happy home poos, and happy home wheeze as well. So see you on the next one. Ta-da.